Hi, everyone. Welcome to the House of Shadows and Ink. My guest today is one of our favorite people. You've seen him everywhere. He's on all our channels. He's our comic book expert with Bark Bites Comics. Welcome, Jasper Bark.
Thank you very much, Joe. And it's nice to know all that blackmail really works. That you're so kind in having me back so many times.
Oh no, it's always fun to chat with you, like, really. So yes, for those who haven't watched your many interviews and Bark Bites Comics videos, tell us just a bit who you are, what makes you awesome, what brings you here today.
I'm a writer of wrongs. Very nasty, hideous, scary, utterly disturbing, completely intrusive wrongs. These wrongs usually appear either in novels, novellas, short stories, or graphic novels and comics. I'm best known amongst the Crystal Lake cognoscenti as the author of the Bark Bites horror series, which is, if you include the Draw You In trilogy, which has had a great response, currently up to its eighth book, which is the soon to be launched. In fact, actually, I think by the time people are watching this, it will be out in the shops. Harmed and Dangerous, which is a book I am really excited to get into people's hands.
Awesome. Yes, like man, this book is every book you write is different than the last one, but this one has like a very special feel to it. And I mean, you've been working on this book for a long time. Like we've been talking about Armed and Dangerous since probably, I don't know, 10 years ago. I don't know. Can it be
Yeah.
that long?
It's a book that's had a very long gestation period. Um, it goes all the way back to 2010, when I was invited by the editor Shelley Bond, who was then running Vertigo, which was DC's like edgy, alt-lit horror um, imprint, which has just been relaunched, by the way. A lot of really exciting
Cool.
new titles, and this was the imprint that gave us the Sandman and Swamp Thing and Hellblazer and the Invisibles and Preacher and so many great comics. And she invited me to come and pitch to her, and while I was at the New York Comic Con in her what was then the New York DC offices, which was um, uh, mind blowing for a kid that grew up reading comics. Like, oh my god, this is the home of comics. This is like, so it was very difficult for me while I was chatting with Shelley, who is an extremely brilliant editor and a very, very lovely human being, to kind of not kind of dissolve into a wet puddle of just fanboying on the floor. I kind of made it through the interview, and she invited me to pitch her some ideas. Sadly, as is often the case, anybody who's ever worked in publishing, and particularly anyone who's ever worked in professional comics, will know you spend about three-quarters of the projects that you develop and pitch to editors never quite get off the starting blocks. And one of the ideas I pitched her, at that time it was called My Bad, because I was particularly taken with that phrase. We don't really use it here in the UK, but it was quite big back in 2010 in the States. So I thought, oh, that'd be a great title. Sadly, since then, it's been used very effectively by a few other authors and comic writers for their titles. So I retired that and came up with Harmed and Dangerous much later. But I pitched to the idea of a young 17-year-old girl running away to a small town in Louisiana because I am completely fascinated with the state of Louisiana. And in fact, so fascinated that I got my daughter fascinated in it. And she did her Ivy League dissertation about 5, 6 years ago on the politics of Louisiana. And that's how obsessed we both became with that particular state. Um, and I wanted to do a story about a small town by a large city girl who goes to a small town in Louisiana and undergoes a supernatural experience, which I'll go into. I pitched that idea to Shelley. She really liked it. We discussed a lot about how we might develop it. And then lots of things happened at DC, and they moved from New York to LA. Shelley stopped working for them. And the idea sat at the back of my mind And then I think about 2014, it was at another convention. I was discussing this idea with a group of other authors that I'd had, and they said, "Well, why didn't you write that as a novel? That'd make a perfect novel." And I thought, "What a brilliant idea!" And so I began working on it then as a novel in 2014. But I had a lot of other commitments, so it was on the back burner. And I spoke about this with my both my teenage daughters. Like, this is the kind of pitch for the novel, and this is kind of what happens. And they loved it, and they have been nagging me ever since to write it. Um, I eventually found some time to write it, and in fact, actually, I kind of stole a bit of time. I pitched you, Draw You In as a single novel. And I thought I'll just quickly bash this novel out and then I'll get to that novel. And it took me a bit longer than I thought. And then it took me way more drafts than I thought. And then ended up writing you an entire trilogy and a whole series of novellas and other projects for other people while I was writing and rewriting and rewriting and rewriting what eventually became Harmed and Dangerous. So that's a very roundabout way of saying it's been 16 years from the initial idea to finally landing in people's hands. And I thought I was going to write it for my daughter. I'd probably have it out by her 17th birthday because the lead character is 17 years old. And my daughter's now 25. Kind of a bit late there, but there we go.
Unbelievable the fact, well, the story behind this, how long, I mean, we've been talking about this book, that it's
Hmm.
finally here. And the fact that your daughter's 25, because I met them when they were very small, which
When they
is
were huge young. You first met
amazing.
them, what was it, 2013, I think? Yeah, they would have been about
Yes, 2013.
They were, yeah, I think my eldest daughter would have been 12
Mm,
and my youngest daughter would have been about 9.
mm,
So
sounds
right
right.
about Kaylee's age.
Yeah, good grief. Well,
I know. I
you
know.
made it.
Yeah, I didn't have any gray hair then either. So
I had
this
some hair
might,
left.
yeah,
Like,
this might well be the novel that's completely affected our hairstyles, Joe.
mm.
But it was worth it, and I hope when people
Oh, I
pick
believe it.
close with
Whatever
it.
happens, and I know people are gonna love it, but whatever happens, the world is a better place having this novel in it. So
Thank you so
plain and
much.
simple. Now it is whether you like supernatural, just a story from a weird perspective, like just something different. A lot of readers say, "Oh, I'm looking for something different. This is that something different," and it has all these elements to it that make you just fall in love with the story and the author's worldview. Like it's like you read a book and you're like, man, this author sounds like they've got a cool view of the world kind of thing. And I love those books even more. Armed and Dangerous. Tell us a bit about your main character, 17-year-old girl. What makes her run away and what is she looking for?
Kyra is a young girl, like many, not just young girls, but I think many people in our contemporary world with all the stresses. She is dealing with emotional and mental health issues. And basically, she's dealing with a huge well of unexpressed anger, and she has great difficulty, and this is affecting her behavior in a whole variety of ways and acting out. And she knows it is. She's also an adopted child. She has two very loving parents that she absolutely adores, but she has no idea who her birth parents are. And her father, who's a lawyer, is trying to help her in the search, but she keeps getting blocked at every turn. And this frustration is feeding into the mental health issues that she has, because she gets this sense that if she just knew who she was and where she came from, she could start
Mm,
addressing all this burden that she's carrying on her shoulders. She is also a true crime fanatic. She's utterly fascinated with serial killers. And she says at one point in the novel, well, some kids growing up, so she's told, had like K-pop stars up on their wall or pictures of My Little Pony or Fortnite. She had Ted Bundy and Ed Gein. She had a favorite. She had serial killers. She's been fascinated with serial killers since she could remember. Um, she thinks it's a perfectly healthy pursuit. I would somewhat agree. Her dad is indulgent in this. Her mom's a little bit, but she lets her daughter go along with it because she's a cool mom. Um, And Kyra has a favorite serial killer, the one she's absolutely, utterly obsessed with. And she's partly obsessed with him because he's a very obscure serial killer, kind of like having your favorite indie band that no one else has heard of. This killer is Billy Ray Johnson, who committed a series of audacious and very brutal crimes in the small Louisiana town of Yeovil, surrounded by bayous, completely remote. It's a place that's spoken of in hushed whispers by other people in the St. Martin's parish in Louisiana, where it's based. Um, and when she gets a breakthrough in her case, trying to find out who her adoptive parents is, she discovers that her birth mom, and one of the reasons why she's been blocked at every stage in this discovery is because her birth mom was her favorite serial killer's fifth and final victim. This is like hits like a bolt from the blue. It sends her spiraling off, and she basically runs away from home and decides she's going to get to Louisiana and try and find out more about what's happening. When she gets to Louisiana, the paranormal elements in the novel start to kick in. She goes to these series of very strange episodes. What first happens is she loses her sight completely; it totally blanks out, and then when it returns, everything she sees around her is what happened on that very day 15 years ago. Physically, her body's in the present. Everything she hears is in the present, but everything she sees around her is what happened 15 years ago. Some force that has been, some strange nebulous presence has been stalking her. It takes over her, and it forces her to walk what it wants her to walk and see what it wants her to see. And suddenly she realizes, as she passes an empty shop window and looks in and sees the reflection looking back at her, that she is looking through the eyes of Billy Ray Johnson 15 years ago to that day, as he stalks her birth mom and her in a stroller. And there's nothing she can do about this because Billy Ray died of lethal injection nearly a decade and a half ago. And that's where the novel picks up and kicks off. And that's where,
That's cool. Yeah, we don't want to give away more than that. Like, yes.
I can promise you there are twists, there are turns, there are things
Mm.
you might see coming, and the things you definitely won't see coming. And also, this is one of the things I like about horror fiction is perhaps more than most other genres, apart perhaps from romance, and you could say erotica. It's a genre that's based around an emotional reaction. We recoil in horror, and but that's not the only emotion that horror addresses. In fact, actually, a lot of the readers that I speak to and a lot of the people that I chat to who are other horror fans and with whom I swap books and get excited, they're people who are dealing with a great deal of trauma and anxiety in their life, either because of their childhood background incidences or because they have jobs that are first responders. And
Mm.
you must know this, a lot of readers are firefighters, paramedics, nurses, people who deal with the everyday trauma of people's lives and have a huge like well of stuff they need to deal with. And the fiction that we write and that we read and watch and love is a great, really safe place to look at those darker feelings. But it's not just the darker feelings. I think we need an emotional outlet. Almost, it's like you need some of the bad stuff pumped out of you. You need a place to put those emotions. This novel is a very um, emotional novel. The emotions are deep and they're not just fear. It definitely will scare you. But my intention in this was to also move you and to look at all those areas in your own life where choices and the emotional consequences of those choices has shaped and affected the person that you are and the relationships that you have with the people closest to you.
Mm.
Um, Particularly in this instance, because like you were both parents of daughters, the familial bond between parent and child has been an ongoing theme throughout a lot of my work, particularly when my kids were growing up. And this is perhaps the apotheosis of my examination of that theme.
No,
So
brilliant.
this is a book that will hopefully scare you. it will hopefully grip you and make it difficult to put down, but it will also, I hope, tug at those heartstrings.
And it's quite a big book. I mean, I was looking at it today. This is other than draw you in. This is like one of your longer ones, like
Yeah.
final cut kind of size. I think that one was also over 100,000.
No, I think that one's Final Cut's actually about half the length of
Okay,
I'm the Dangerous.
sure.
I think when I started writing Final Cut, I thought I was going to write like a novelette cum novella, and it just kind of like bloated like a sponge soaking up loads of water, soaked up too many of my ideas. And yeah, Harm the Dangers was the same. I thought it was going to be like 70,000 word novel. I think it comes in at about probably twice that,
Mm.
which
I
is
think
not
it
bad.
was 140, which is awesome. For those uh, people not familiar with all your books, I'm gonna put the links in the description. I
Thanks.
mean, you've had Run to Ground, The Final Cut, Quiet Places, Draw You In volumes 1, 2, and 3. And then we had the collection where that started it all. Oh, so Dead Scalp is also there. And then
Yeah.
the collection that started all, Stuck on You and Other Prime Cuts. What like if someone's looking for short stories, you can't go wrong with Stuck on You and Other Prime Cuts.
Cool. One of the things, yeah, one of the ways we wanted to market the Bark Bites horror series to people was that this is horror 2.0. It's been regened, retooled, and reinvented for a new audience, which is something that horror and gothic fiction has been doing since the 17th century, just about. It reinvents itself to
Mm,
address contemporary fears and anxieties, which change all the time. We have a lot of fear and anxiety in the world at the moment. But these books are for the adventurous and curious and brave readers that want to try something new, that may have slightly jaded palates. They've seen a lot of zombies.
mm,
There's always a new way to write a classic zombie novel. There's always a new way to write to reinvent a vampire novel. But if you want to see new stories done in new ways that address new fears, then these are the novels for you. If you think you've seen everything there is to see in horror fiction, I can promise you these novels will surprise you, and they will show you sights that you have never seen before. And please put us to the test on this. I absolutely promise we can deliver.
mm.
This is not quite like this is not your mom and dad's horror. This is not your grandparents' horror. This is your horror. This is 21st century. This is what horror will look like for the rest of the century. I promise you. So
Nice.
get it on the ground floor.
And just like you mentioned it now, our times have changed. I mean, just look at the last 10 years. Back in 2016, how much has changed since 2016? It's what
Ah,
has happened? Good grief. And no wonder people are struggling with, like anxiety and stuff. It's
yeah, a lot.
thank goodness for books.
I read an interesting little study actually that was looking at the effects of social media and general doom scrolling on our brains. And they measured up the what happens electronically in your
Mm,
brain and what happens in terms of chemically and hormonally. And they discovered that scrolling for too long, as we all know, does it raises dopamine levels so high that your body due to what's called hypostasis, which is the body's need to keep all things in balance. If you get too overstimulated, and if you get too many dopamine hits, it actually has to release things like cortisol to bring you down, to bring your mood down. So your brain is effectively going through like a bipolar process,
mm,
only like 10 times faster than it normally would. And also because everything is given you on social media in tiny little bite-sized chunks, which sometimes we need. Sometimes we need to turn our brain off. We don't want long form content, in which case it's perfect. But a continual diet of that shortens our attention span, makes it much harder for us to concentrate and to focus on weighty issues. And all of these effects were measured in terms of the brain's electrical activity, the neuron uptake, the
mm,
synaptic activity that was going on, and the release of brain chemicals. It can all be proven that this really isn't good for us for large periods of time. But there was one tiny little coda in this study that really excited me, and that was there's one thing you can do for 10 minutes to entirely reset your brain chemistry and all the wiring of your brain. Like take it right back and
Mm.
basically cure you of all that stuff. Just takes you 10 minutes, and that's read a book. Books really are
Mhm.
magical. And I know feels difficult at times to find the time to read. And any time spent reading on whatever device you read, and I think you should read on any device for that you could possibly get hold of. And I think audiobooks are fucking fantastic because they've doubled the amount of books I can read. I read
Same.
on my phone, on my tablet. I read normal books. I've got a Kindle
Cool.
and several varieties. I read in every single space, and it really is a boon. It's a blessing to my mental and emotional health. Um, so yeah, that will be one piece of advice for everybody facing down the terrors of the day. Just if you can find 10 minutes every day, the effects on your health and well-being are scientifically proven to be um, huge.
And I can also say if you're reading a book, a good book,
Mm.
throughout the day you're gonna be excited, like, oh, I can't wait to get home. I can't wait to go to the bathroom. I can't wait to get in bed and read. Like it's and you think about, oh, I
Yeah,
wonder what's gonna happen. It's a good distraction to have
yeah.
when there's just a bombardment of negative stuff every single day. It's like I can go back in my mind, like just stand back a bit and think about that book I'm gonna
Mm.
get to read tonight. It's for me personally, it's amazing, and heavy into audiobooks now. I've been struggling lately to see, like my eyes get very tired. I mean, I work all day on a computer screen, so now I can, and even it's on my phone. I put in my earphones. I told Kaylee, like, okay, so if you see me on my phone, I'm reading a book. Like, you can come and check while I'm listening to a
Mhm.
book, because I want her to know I'm reading, because we are developing, this love of reading kind of thing. So she has to know I'm not just like looking at YouTube shorts or whatever, because that's what she likes to do. But she loves reading. So no more taking a phone to the bathroom. She can read a book. Um,
That's
she
what
loves
I've
that.
always done. That's what I've always done personally, and I actually have little bookshelves in all of my bathrooms,
Mm.
just so I have something to read. Obviously, and those times I spent sitting by myself. But usually I take the book I am reading. Um, but there was a point I was going to make that slightly escaped me about really. Oh yes, I was going to say about audiobooks. The other thing about audiobooks, I tend to listen to them either when I'm exercising or when I'm doing
Mm.
household chores. And that means that when there's like a giant stack of laundry that I've just done sitting there on the side, I get excited because I'm like,
Mm.
yes, that's like 20 minutes with my book. I
Yep.
can play that in the background while I'm doing mindless jobs. So, and it's a way of keeping my brain active. And obviously,
Mm.
I would imagine a lot of people watching this because I know what an intelligent and imaginative community of readers exist around Crystal Lake because I had the huge good fortune to interact with a lot of them. You're probably exactly like me, and I would imagine exactly like Joe, that your mind sometimes is just a little bit too active.
No.
It's like an excitable puppy. It's just got too much energy. Or anyone who's ever raised like small boys will just tell you, you just have to take them out like for at least an hour every day and just run them off, just burn that energy off. And I find um, writing and reading for me is a way of just keeping that mind engaged and active. And that's why audiobooks is so great. Because, if you're utterly fascinated and caught up in the world of somebody else's strange, intrusive activities, keeps out those weird, intrusive thoughts or those bizarre obsessions you might otherwise get caught up in unnecessarily, which won't do anything for like your general like health and well-being.
That I'm doing the same now. It's my morning routine. After I drop Kaylee at school, I come straight back and I get on the treadmill for 20 minutes and I listen to whatever book I've got on there. And if because and directly after that I go to work. So if I'm feeling a little bit like unmotivated, I'll listen to like a nonfiction business kind of
Yeah.
audiobook just to get my mind like running and rolling, and and then it's crazy. Then the moment I'm done there, it's cold water or coffee, and I start working, and I'm like super pumped to be at work and all that stuff. So it's it's a mood changer when you need it as well. Like, and sometimes I'll put in like listen to a horror book, and sometimes I'll listen to something funny. Like I'm listening to these behind the scenes documentaries now of The Office, Friends, Big Bang Theory, Parks and Recreation. Like I'm just jumping from one to the other one. That's my like, what do you call that? Guilty pleasure or whatever. Just because I love
Yeah.
those shows. Why not? I hope they make one
Um,
for Scrubs as well. That would be cool.
That would be very cool. That is a cool show. And I would say, I cannot stress too much the importance of reading as a guilty pleasure. We
Mm.
often see it as an educational activity. And again, you and I have
Yes.
now been talking about all the ways in which reading is a wholesome way of helping your health. But as a guilty pleasure, it's also extremely important. While both my girls were going through university, as many people who do go through like higher education find, you're forced to read. And so I
Mm.
remember an awful lot of my friends, when you look at their bookshelves, like 10 years after they graduated, they hadn't changed in the slightest. The same books that they were reading when they were 20 were still on their shelves because they've been forced to read for an intense 3-year period. It really, it really stopped being a pleasure. They stopped associating reading with a pleasurable
Mhm.
activity. So I bought both of my girls like really trashy graphic novels and what you might describe as terrible pulpy romancy fiction for them to read, and kept saying, just read this. It's absolute pure garbage. It's pure pleasure. There's
You love
nothing
it.
appealing about it. But it just, because in our general everyday diet, everybody knows that we should be watching our calories, we should be keeping carbohydrates under a certain thing, we shouldn't be eating
Mm.
too trans fats and all the other different fads that we've got to keep, and the health of our diet. But everybody loves a good burger once in a while, or a good greasy pizza. It's an incredibly important part of our diet just to get us happy and excited about
Mm.
food. And in every diet, you should have a reading diet. Throw in some real crap, and throw in some just guilty pleasures. You know it's not well written. You know the story is preposterous. You know characters don't do this in real life, but it's so much fun. Have a good dose of that in your reading.
Mm.
And like you as well, I love reading nonfiction as well, and I read in and outside a variety of genres. Uh, One of the things I also really love reading, in addition to genre fiction, one genre I really love is hard-boiled crime novels. And I've never come up with a good idea for a hard-boiled crime novel that gets me really excited and forces me to sit down at the word processor. I have far too many ideas for horror novels, but I've never really hit on a crime novel that I really go, I must write that. And as a consequence, hard-boiled crime is like a little haven. I go there and I read it, and I'm not thinking, oh, how has the author done this, or why have they done that?
Mm. True.
I have that idea. It's just like, wow. And some of them, are terrible. And I love the old 1930s, 1940s, 1950s pulp fiction, it's based around that. And some of it's indefensible in terms of its content and the way it's written, but it brings me huge amounts of pleasure. So yeah, along with the reading, read a lot of absolute complete crap, garbage, as and read fiction and non-fiction. Read inside and out of a genre, if that takes your fancy. And if it doesn't, if you really only want to read about kaiju attacks on major urban conurbations, that's your thing. Fantastic.
Go for
Stick
it.
with that. You found your joy in life.
I started the year with a very literary novel with Wellfall, which was amazing, blew my
Oh, by
mind.
Daniel Kraus.
And then I finished up a nonfiction book about business stuff, and I felt like, man, now I need a bit of a just like a guilty pleasure kind of thing. And I listened to Dungeon Crawler Call, which
I'm
and
Matt Dinnerman.
even if you've read the book,
Yeah.
listen to the audio. It's the best audio production I've heard in years. I will finish that whole series just because I can hear it on audio and keep listening to that narrator do the voices and the computers and the AI and all that stuff. I laughed out loud many. There's nothing in it to learn from. Like, well, there's good character arcs. Like you actually like get
Mhm.
invested with the characters, but I mean, there's not much to learn from it. There's not like I don't want to talk bad about the book. I mean, it's captivating. It's overblown. It characters. It's action. It's sometimes a bit difficult to see exactly what it would look like because the setting isn't something we've seen on Earth.
Mhm.
Um, but I mean, what a great way to just have some fun, like
Oh, hell yeah.
especially with that audiobook. Yes.
And certain, I confess, I've tried certain authors that I might be on the fence about if they've got a brilliant narrator, and I've seen that
Mm,
narrator do that. Some other
great
authors
book.
work up and thought, I'll give this a try just because I love their voice.
Mm.
Uh,
Okay, so any advice to authors who want to, or maybe they are writing a kind of weird spin on supernatural serial killers? How to, like you said, there's always a unique way to write a vampire novel or zombie novel. So, what can we do different with serial killers?
um, perhaps look at strip the idea back to its very um, basic building blocks. It's always a really good idea to go right back to the earliest examples in this genre, perhaps the books which kicked off a genre, because in many ways they're still often the most inventive and
Mm,
innovative, even though many people have built on that person's work. And look at what was it about that work that really scared you, or what was it about that work that really moved you in some particular way, and how and why did those tropes work? Take them down to their absolute bare essence, and then once you've kind of almost brushed off all the cultural detritus, all the kind of things which stick to a serial killer, for instance, and all the the way that serial killers are kind of these days very sexy characters who are brilliant
mm,
Hannibal Lecter style characters, are one step ahead of the law, and they're going to be superstars in terms of the media because all the courage their crimes get, and yada yada yada. And think about brush all that away and think, what was it about the serial killer that really emotionally affected me? And once you've got the essence of the idea, then think about how that operated when it was first written about, and how that those very same ideas, tropes, themes, and concepts might um, currently exist if no one had written about that until this very present day. If you didn't have that whole
mm,
history of this tiny little subgenre, if this was the first book written based on those precepts that the earliest novels in the genre were written on, were being written today in this age, how would they operate? In what ways would they be different from the original idea, and how can I make those ideas just as fresh and exciting and new and original to a modern audience as they were to um, the audience that first encountered them when this little subgenre really hit the public domain? Um, and the other thing I would say is also think about, as a writer, as an author, your personal investment in this story. What do you want to say about yourself that perhaps you wouldn't want to say in a memoir or in a social media post?
mm.
What elements of your character might you want to reveal to a secret confessor, and how can you hide these? And equally as well, also. If you are an author and a reader, and even if you're not an author and a reader, you're probably a highly imaginative, intelligent person. You've probably made a lot of observations about the world, and you've seen a lot of things that you actually really would like to draw people's attention to. Um, Sometimes, when you hit upon an idea for a novel, it suddenly then also occurs to you there is this theme or this concept you've always wanted to talk about that you've noted as a prevalent part by the human condition or society at large, and you really want to talk about this. maybe think about with your serial killer novel, once you've thought about how you want to highlight or work on the kind of the original tropes that really kicked off this genre, think about what your personal investment in the story is. Is this the novel that finally allows you to talk about your feelings about um, family and parenthood, about the exploitative nature of modern society, about interpersonal relationships between genders, about your sexuality? What's your personal investment in this? Why would this story mean something to you as a person? Because the more of that you put into the story, the more other people who feel exactly the same way you do, and who need to hear the things that you have to say will get invested in your story. And that's when it becomes something personal to them, something that they can own, that is written just for them. Um, so those are the areas perhaps I would say to look at if you're wanting to do something with any idea, really. But if this will work with serial killers as well as it would work with vampires or bog monsters or 40-foot killer alien robots.
No, that's true. I think that's one of the reasons I found Wellfall so captivating is because of the father-son relationship.
Mm,
My father was also this kind of like rugged seaman who, like he went out on the ocean for like 3 months, deep sea fishing, and like had the sailor tattoos and all that stuff. We grew up in a coastal town, and when I interviewed Daniel, I was like, where did you get this like the coastal vibe and everything? Like, no, he researched it, but it was like he was like, and he knows the kind of stories the sailors talk about, like tell each other, and the family relationships and all that stuff. So, um, you have to make that connection. That so every novel needs to be at least two things for you, like
mm,
the story, but also that personal connection. Otherwise,
yeah.
it's not going to be as meaningful, and it's going to be you're not going to be so passionate about it that when you hit the hard times, which will come, what's going to push you through, what's going to motivate you and keep you writing. And then when the book comes out, like you need to promote it. So if people can hear about that personal connection that you have with the book, and what kind of personal journeys they're going to go on while reading it, you can't just say, "Oh, my book is scary, read it." Like it
Mm,
needs levels to it. So no, that's
yeah,
awesome.
I couldn't
Okay,
agree.
so Armed and Dangerous. Um, any comparable titles that you can think of?
Um, two that spring to mind would be "My Heart Is a Chainsaw" by Stephen Graham Jones.
Nice.
There are a lot of. I'm pretty sure that if you enjoy that book, you will really enjoy "Harmed and Dangerous." And I know what a good book that is. So obviously, I'm not trying to aggrandize myself, but if I hadn't written this book and somebody said to me, "Give me a recommendation like that," I would definitely say,
Mm.
"Oh, if you liked My Heart's a Chainsaw, try Harmed and Dangerous." And another book, which is in terms of a lot of themes and tones, which is very, very similar, is The Reformatory by Tananarive which is fabulous, utterly fabulous book. But it explores different themes, and it has a similar emotional journey in many ways. And again, this was something that was very personal to the author. So if
Cool.
you enjoyed those two books, I'm pretty sure you'd also enjoy Harmed and Dangerous.
Oh no, awesome. I'm actually, like if you've read an awesome book or a movie and you recommend it to people and you're like, man, they're so lucky they're gonna get to experience it all over again. That's like the feeling I have when I recommend this book to people. Like you're in for a hell of a ride. So
Thank you.
enjoy.
Yeah,
Oh,
and don't forget, I wrote this book just for you. Absolutely, seriously. When I was writing, the whole time I had you in mind. You're gonna love it, promise you.
cool. No, I agree. Thanks, Jasper. This is
Thank you
always
so much.
fun. Any final words for readers who are gonna read this at night?
Um, when you've read it, I would say if you have children, then I would hope you'd want to phone them up and tell them just what they mean to you. And if your parents are still in your life, I would also hope that when you read it, you'd also want to give them a call and tell them what awesome
Cool.
human beings they are.
That's good. Oh,
in
thanks.
spite of all their faults and yours.
Well, have an awesome week, Jasper, and good luck with this book. We are
Thank you
just
so
as
much.
invested into it as you are, and I hope fans will give it a try. And of course, then give us feedback like reviews, pop on social media, tag Jasper Bark, tag Crystal Lake
I'd
Publishing.
love to hear from you.
He will definitely get a reply from us.
Yep,
That's for sure.
and me.
Thanks, Jasper.
Thanks,
All the
Joe.
best. Cheers.
And